still it's partially opened, and we are expecting to fully operate the hotel in next autumn. But I believe, as you mentioned, the high-end quality tourists, just saying from Japan, will be continually increasing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hori. And I think I would like to just add to what Mr. Hori said. Is there again, for you investors, another opportunity to see that there is that discerning upmarket customer out there in the world? Nepal has to build up and create the facilities, conveniences for that upmarket clientele that could come to this country. And Sarankote is one of the most beautiful areas, but there are many, many, many areas like Sarankote in Nepal that have not been touched. So all of you should think, you know what, there are plenty of areas that we can go and develop. The whole of this country has got features, assets that is very unique and is waiting there for you to discover. My next question to Professor James McCartney, Associate Professor of International Integrated Resort Management at the University of Macau's Faculty of Business Administration. Professor McCartney, my question to you. How do you see the future of Nepal in terms of being the next recreational destination, given its advantageous geographical location and its unmatchable natural and cultural heritage?
Thank you, Anna. It's a very meaningful question. I'd actually like to say what an honor it is to return back to Nepal. I've been away a few years and see the beauty of the place and the beauty of the people, and so welcoming. I also like to thank the Investment Summit for their kind invitation as well to be here. If I may, I'd just take a little step back, because this morning with the Prime Minister and his very appropriate, and he ticked all the boxes to me. I travel the world and I talk about tourism development, I talk to cities about city branding, and he certainly was very positive, and he really addressed all the key things. And all I say is, going back to the talk by Dr. Nassim from Singapore, who said, and it's very true, about one of the most important things when it comes to tourism development is having a master plan, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And there's many things that go into a master plan, a vision, mission, objectives, and some we'll call very obtainable measurement facts that you want to achieve, but also KPIs that you're always reflecting back on. A plan is only good as a plan unless you execute it. And Singapore has been excellent in executing their tourism plan. They've been, even around the Marina Bay Sands, that very iconic integrated resort, which cost $6 billion by private enterprise to pay for that. That whole Marina Bay is all master planned. And coming back to Dr. Nassim, I am from Macau, and I'm just going to mention that a little bit briefly. We do not have an Everest, and neither does Singapore. In fact, we have a little mountain outside my house, which is so small. In fact, my building is bigger than my mountain, because we are only 600,000 people and 28 kilometers squared. We had 30 million visitors last year. 30 million. 16 million from China. In 2020, Macau will be the richest destination in the world by IMF standards because of tourism. We are 85% of GDP reliant on tourism. We know how a force for good, for a force for employment, for a force for the economy, and a force for government coffers who wants that taxation. In 1990, in the mid-1990s, we were not rich. Singapore and Macau, a few other are stories of success. Stories of success because of a few things. Singapore master planned, and public policy. Public policy that makes sense. Public policy, not just because of lots of rules and regulations, which are very important in hospitality and tourism, and I've seen them all being spelt out here today. But for all those recreation, I have them all sitting here, and I was asked, what do you think? And my answer is, yes, they all can work. But one thing is public policy, that every policy that you make, you have to protect the locals, you have to protect the environment, you have to protect the local SMEs, give them a chance. You have to protect local labor, give them a chance. You have to give all these things in public policy. But it has to be public policy that the private sector can buy in on and see it as a profitable ROI, where it be 5, 10, 15, 20 years. People like Mike, who's done a wonderful job with his integrated resort. So public policy is good, but it also has to be one that attracts the private investor. And I'm coming back also, when we talk about recreation, I see ski slopes, I see medical tourism, I see wellness tourism, I see many recreational things, movie cities. These are not actually new concepts, but Nepal could make them their concepts because Nepal is unique, its heritage, its environment, and so forth. So you should not be, because I think Nepal is particularly unique in its rich heritage, its rich culture, and its rich history, that we have to be very careful about when you adopt tourism, that you do not change, you do not fabricate. Macau has to fabricate because we are not born with the natural assets of Nepal. We don't have waterfalls, we don't have mountains, and we don't have that rich culture that you have, dating back centuries and centuries. So we have to build concrete and steel. It works for us, it definitely works for Las Vegas, and for example, it works for Marina Bay Sands. So fabrication is one thing, but authenticity is a very, very strong tourism sell. So when you come back to these recreational projects, I think you have to, those are my three things. I have to master plan it, public policy, and I also think that you have to be very careful that you make them uniquely Nepal in terms of your environment and your culture and so forth. And I can talk about those things in greater detail if people wish.
Thank you, Professor. I think that was brilliant, that you brought our notice to how important that a master plan has to be made and the policies, but all this should be the way, in the Nepali way, fitting the Nepali people, the Nepali heritage, the Nepali culture, and the Nepali essence. I think that was something very beautiful and something very deep, that what you've said, because we're all in this rush to say we need to develop, we need to develop. Yes, we develop, but not forgetting our heritage, not forgetting our assets, and keeping it in a very sustainable way, because we still have unborn Nepalis, unborn citizens of the world to come, for whom we need to save and keep these places pristine. Thank you, Professor. My next question to Mr. Mike. In your experience, Mike, what are the opportunities and challenges of investing in Nepal, especially in the tourism sector?
Thanks. Thank you, Sangeeta. So I think it's incredible to hear. I've also been to Sarankot, which is beautiful, being able to see, I think it's 8,000 meter peaks just above Pokhara. And I know of another, I believe it was a Japanese-built hotel in the Mountain View, which is in the Everest region near to Tengboche, where you can see Amadablam, Lhotse, and Everest. So I commend you on your vision for that. In terms of challenges or the opportunities really outside of those high-end, and I know some people are building in Jomsom and Mustang and up there, but as you said, there's such a broad variety. It would be hard to list them, particularly when we're time constrained. But for us, really, our own vision, our own master plan really was for 3 integrated resorts along the south border with India. So the first in Bhairawa, the second in Japa, and then depending on the feedback we got from that really was to build it in the far west, in the Mahendranagar, Dangadi region, so close to Delhi. I think once the connectivity from Delhi, Haryana gets better, maybe down to 3 or 4 hours drive to that side of the border, it will really become a destination much like places in Cambodia and Laos are for the Thais. So I think from our perspective, those are the interesting development opportunities. In terms of challenges, I think people have come back to it again. It was the vice president of ADB mentioned transport, power, electricity, and water fundamentally. But I think really the key thing for us is airlift and air transport. So we faced the challenge really of upgrading Tribhuvan, then also opening the second airport, which is in Gautam Buddha, which is near to Lumbini. I believe the third is in Pokhara. So once we get the people here, we also have the ability as my esteemed colleague mentioned earlier on, of then flying people potentially and using modern technology once we have them in Nepal to then disperse them throughout the whole 1,000-kilometer wide country to all of these wonderful other places. So I think really the focus needs to be on executing the infrastructure, the roads to a certain extent, but particularly for us, the airports. And I'm very, very hopeful that we can open the second international airport and really open the gateway to Lumbini, hopefully this year. We've certainly been working very closely with Civil Aviation of Nepal, Ministry of Tourism, Nepal Tourism Board to try and develop and at least make people aware in Vietnam and Thailand and also in China about the beauty of Lumbini and the fact that people need to come and see that. So so hopefully together we can all overcome those infrastructure issues and really ramp up the success of tourism in Nepal.
Thank you, Mike. And as we heard from our Prime Minister in the session this morning, there is a big commitment towards infrastructure development, and I'm sure that will come in place, and I think we've come a long way. Just before I let you go, Mike, maybe you could also share with potential and future investors what about your return on investment? How quickly is that? I mean, from my experience in Nepal tourism sector, your return is very, very quick. It doesn't take so long as other projects. So maybe you could just put a small light into that. Just
Sure.
take a few minutes on that, please.
I think, so we, as I said, certainly in the build process took a little bit longer, getting the investment approvals and otherwise, but all of that is improving. Since we've opened, we've had over 150,000 visitors in the first 13 months, so we're averaging about 10 to 12,000 visitors a month for a 100-room hotel. Everybody is using it really as a gateway to Chitwan in the east and also Lumbini in the west. One of the key issues or the key advantages really about integrated resort tourism is that you can offer all of the benefits of meetings, conventions and otherwise, but we also do have the financial engine of a casino. Being a listed company in Australia, and adherent to all of the rules about anti-money laundering and all of the things that you'd expect, we're able again to raise the level of ownership really of those types of things. So we are looking now at recovering our $50 million investment, hopefully in the next 3 years, and that will enable us again to then go on and do the same and use the learnings from that, use the database that we've created, improve the opportunity. And hopefully, again, do the same for less, but for a higher return in Japa.
Thank you, Mike. I think that is quite a good picture. So I'd like to take my next question to Mr. Hori again. How has your experience in investing in Nepal been? How do you see the prospect of Nepal developing itself to create new destination and tourism infrastructure? Mr. Hori.
Thank you for your very difficult question, Sagit. First, if I talk about the investment, I mean hotel investment, which I mentioned, then it takes 2 nights, 3 nights, long time. So I explain very simply. In our case, we started our investment in 2012. We were a bit optimistic because the hotel is very popular industry in here, and there are lots of resources. And sort of on a private basis, we asked a guy to lead the project. At the early stage, it worked very well, but with the turning point of earthquake, it has slowed down, and it's in time-wise, cost-wise, overrun, to be honest. So we reflect that we should have the solid, more organized, more official team at the very beginning, which covers not only the construction itself, but the relationship with village people, relationship with government authorities. if we did so, then the picture would be much different. One reason is that the number of the investment from Japan is very few. Actually, I used to be work in a bank, SMBC, and we had taken care of lots of investment projects, Thailand, Malaysia, some Asian countries. But for those countries, there are lots of experiences in Japan. And for example, we have named JETRO, Japan Export Trade Investment Organization, and they are very good partner for us. They advise us, they suggest us. But in this case, they have very few knowledge about Nepal. So we had to manage almost by ourselves. So if we team up with Nepali, how should I say, experienced people, and we had clearer strategy from the very beginning, then the hotel might have started already. So from this point, lots of secret information we have. So let me stop at this point.
But you know, Mr. Hori, what you just said, I think would be applicable to any other country. If you don't have a great team on board, on grounds,
yes.
And if there isn't a clear picture of how you want to move forward, I think this would be a problem faced anyway. It's not specific to Nepal,
yeah,
I think.
In short,
but I think it's great for the future investors to hear that you do need a solid partner or a team on board, like in any other country. Nepal is not different. We do have an amazing people, but we still have to have a team that's concretely knowing what they're doing and where they're going and what needs to be done, a relationship with the local villagers and the local people. So definitely, I think that would apply in any other country.
It's not too late.
Yes, it's still not too late. But we still have one more question from you, which is, how do you see the prospect of Nepal developing itself to create new destinations and tourism infrastructure?
It's also quite difficult because, as they mentioned, we may have the Singapore type or, simply speaking, the Disneyland type of facility to attract people. Yes, this is one solution. But the Nepal has the country of long history, lots of heritage. It's not the same as some other countries in Asia. So what I want to say is the important point is to preserve the uniqueness, tradition, identity of Nepal. Now, of course, things is not so simple. So blending or mixing the, how should I say, the very modern tourism strategy together with the sort of very conservative traditional approach, then Nepal will become more fascinating countries, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Hori. I think you've touched on a very deep subject where you use the word identity, and I think that's something very close to the heart of all Nepalis, that we keep our identity as we go along in development as well, and keep that in mind in all our projects. So I think that's a great point that you brought forward, that we have to remember, the government has to remember, us in the private sector as well, that we keep encouraging and having projects that does not, in any case, in any way, come or take us away from the identity of a Nepali person, which is so unique and for which we are actually admired for which we are loved for, and for which we are recognized for. So thank you very much, Mr. Hori.
Thank you.
I'd like to move to Professor McCartney. Professor, the question to you is, given the fact that Nepal is a sacred place for Hindus and Buddhists, how do you see the prospects of developing Nepal as a mecca of spirituality and peace?
It's a very good question, and actually, I'd like to go back to a key hero here who said a very interesting point before he came to Macau. He asked his children and his wife, "What's your impression of Nepal?" This is called brand perception, and to me, is a very important part. You can say Nepal is this and this and this, and you can put it on your slogans. You can go out to, but is it believable and valid? And how people perceive. And if it's a neutral perception, is as bad as a negative perception we have found in the world. People don't get on an aeroplane unless they have a positive image perception of your destination. So I think it's a very valid point. If you say we're a destination of pilgrimage, we're a destination of adventure tourism, or we're a destination of this, it has to be a believable pitch. So before you go to campaign ideas over the next 5-10 years, go to your potential markets and see what they think of Nepal, and then you maybe get a bit of realism how you may have to adjust your marketing campaigns, because destination image perception is an extremely important part of the process of bringing new tourists who are going to spend more, niche tourists who are going to stay longer, and so forth. So I just wanted to bring up on that point. When we look at issues of spiritual tourism and Mecca for peace, again, my answer is yes, Nepal could be, but you have to be, this particular special interest tourism, you have to be very understanding of the local people when you introduce this one. I mean, when you go to Rome, many people will go to the Vatican. It's part of their visit. But Rome has already ramped up for tourism arrivals, so it can access for thousands of people walking around. And when I go to places of pilgrimage or worship, and the tourists are gazing in at your place of worship as you're in a temple or a holy spot, how do you react to that? So there has to be it has to be really well thought out if you're going to introduce this into as part of your tourism product. Because locals are going to be involved, the community is going to be involved. It's part of their, in being Hindu and being Buddhist, it's part of their everyday practice. And then you're going to have a gazing tourist. So you have to be careful about how you implement this one in a sensitive and meaningful way. I think it's a strong pitch, but you have to do it in a very, I think today we talk about a sustainable tourism, and that's a big buzzword now globally, is do it in a way that does not negatively impact your community. So the answer is yes, it can, but again, you have to do it in a very, with safeguards. I think another area you could actually look at is when we look at is festivals. I think one of the things you didn't mention here is your year-round festivals. Festivals are can be a very important attraction tool for many tourists to become and be involved in and respect your culture, because we always talk about here's a product, here's a product, here's a product. We have moved a long way from that 10, 20 years ago in tourism. It's all about experiences, exploring, and putting on social media and telling my friends, this is what I'm doing. Tourism is not about a presentation of products. Tourism is a presentation of potential experiences. That's what tourism is today. So my experiences at your festivals or your religious gatherings, they want to share that. It's not about a product. So you have to change your mind think. All right, so when we talk about this is my product, you're wrong. This is about how all these new tourists come here because they want to have experiences. The new tourists, for sure, everybody has a mobile here, and I'm sure even during this talk has had a little look at their WeChat or WhatsApp. So everybody is socially engaged, looking at images and so forth. So you have to get real about today, about how we market and how we put those experiences across. I think as a final comment today is, I always like to say, and I didn't start, tourism is the world's #1 industry. I'd like to say thank you for sitting in this one today. We are the world's #1 industry. All the other industries benefit from us, communication, water, and so forth. The clothing, small organic farm that provides fruits and vegetables, and so forth, to our restaurants. So we are a very important part of how Nepal will go forward in the future, because multiple other industries will benefit by your success. And I also like to say today, some people come over to me, they're downbeat, say, you know what, our airport, our infrastructure. I know I've traveled around Nepal, and I say, yes, it's a bit of an adventure at times, beyond the adventure tourism bit. The actual infrastructure is adventurous. But I don't say be downbeat, because I've seen lots of positive energy here. today and lots of positive, upbeat sentiment. But coming back to my point is, you have to really start actually implementing some of these points. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Professor. And I think your point is right, that we've got to be very sensitive towards our local sentiments of when we're talking about religious tourism. But here I think our government and we are talking about pilgrimages, so that's already to do with the locals being integrated into that. And with Lumbini, I guess it offers itself additionally on spirituality and peace, to be a haven for peace and spirituality. And I just want to add here, I don't know how many of you know that Lumbini has been the birthplace of, well, there have been 4 Buddhas born, of which we are very familiar that Gautam Buddha was born, but apart from him, we have proof that 2 other Buddhas were born there. So, and as to my knowledge and what I've learned from a small age, we human beings do not choose and decide where we get born, but the Buddhas choose which part of planet, which area they would be born, whose womb they would be born from. So it must have some sort of a meaning why 3 Buddhas choose to be born in an area which we call Lumbini or the Greater Lumbini. So that has a meaning, and I think Nepal has this in its geographical area, and I do believe it does not belong to Nepal privately, it belongs to the world, to humanity. And I guess here's a scope in Lumbini for international investors, domestic investors to take this opportunity to invest there, but in a sustainable, responsible, and respectful way. So I think, thank you. I think with that we've come to some sort of all the questions, but then we still have. So I'd like to say thank you first to my panelists, but then I want to take this forward to the audience. We will take some questions from the audience. So if there are any questions to any one of my panelists or to me or to the CEO of NTB or even to the chair, please.
Yes, please. Can we have the mic? And I think on behalf of the moderator also, I'd like to request to kindly keep the questions to the questions and not on remarks, because we're running short on time. And if you may direct your question to one particular person, that would be really great.
Honorable speakers, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Abbas. I am Honorary Consul of Nepal in Sudan. I consider myself as a Nepali while presenting what I'm going to say. I am a director of a Salam Bank. A Salam Bank is registered in Sudan. There are other 2 Salam Banks, one in Algeria and the 3rd in Bahrain. The majority shareholders of these banks are from Gulf area. Being a director of the Sudanese bank, among 8, those shareholders who are initially directors in the board of directors from the Gulf, and they have money, and they are ready to invest, and this will be directly to Mr. Joshi with tourism or through tourism to construct a very high standard hotel or series of hotels through their companies, through their know-how, through their ability. If you have ready, complete plans for an hotel or series of hotel, I'm ready to take them with me, and they will start constructing immediately so as to catch Mr. Hori. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abbas. I think that's very encouraging, very, very optimistic, very positive. But I am sure Mr. Deepak, he has shown us and listed a whole lot of the different projects we have, and I know that there are a couple of hotels there, so after the session, I'm sure we can hand over these projects, and I think they have even more detailed plans within that. Thank you so much, Mr. Abbas.
We'll be able to take in 2 more questions because we'll have to wrap up after that. So if anyone else has another question. All right, we have one more question there from the gentleman. Can we give them the mic, please? Once again, just your name and who you're directing your question to. After him, we'll take one last question, and then, all right, one last question, and then we're wrapping up.
So my name is Madhu, and I am from Macau. So my question to you is Mr. Glenn and Mike. So I went to Macau in 1999, and so right now, where Macau is, and then the analysts in Macau and academics in Macau are saying that Nepal has potential to become next Macau, because we share the same elements with the Macau to China. So don't you or Glenn and Mike, that should we promote Nepal as a destination for integrated resort? So when I say the integrated resort, then of course it has the casino, but casino is not a big part of the whole offering. So it will be just around 3 or 5% of the whole offering. So do you guys can think we have this opportunity to promote as an integrated resort destination? Thank you.
I'll start, and I'll say yes because Mike's sitting beside me, So actually, you come to a good point. I mean, integrated resorts, but the word that people don't like sometimes is casino. So I've just come back from Japan. I'm going back to Japan in a few months' time to talk to the government. The government there last year legalized casinos for the first time, and are going to build 3 integrated resorts at $10 billion each. 10 billion each. That's price tag, and they have so many international suitors right now. They can pick and choose which one. Each city, it might be Osaka, Tokyo, and so forth. And the plan of the Prime Minister's Office of Japan is to revitalize tourism and trade. That is the main reason they're going to have IRs. They don't mention the word casinos. So by 2025, Japan will have 3 large integrated resorts, maybe off the same like Marina Bay Sands. So they've chosen that as a pathway to revitalize and rejuvenate their tourism and trade. Singapore also, for 2005, they didn't have casino legalization. They made that big leap of policy making because they wanted to stay competitive in the region as a leading tourism and MICE destination. And they knew that they had to have a integrated resort setting. So there's argument for an integrated resort setting. It's playing out in the Philippines, it's playing out in Vietnam. So there's many locations. Casinos only 3% of a 97% non-gaming of arenas, malls, shopping malls, entertainment, food and beverage, and is a significant economic driver and an employment factor. And I like Mike probably do more statistics.
So I'll be brief. So thanks for the question, Madhu, and thanks, Glenn. I think, really for us, the challenge really for us, I think certainly the answer to your question is yes. The great thing about Nepal is, of course, you have a 1,200 kilometer land border with India, all of which is crossable. So I think one of the things that we've, in our own master plan, is to have 3, and each successive time change it a little bit to make sure that it suits the surrounds and the surrounding area and delivers what the customers would like and leverages off what's already there the great thing about what we've done on a much, much smaller scale, of course, with $50 million, smaller compared with these other countries, but fairly large in Nepal, is to enhance or at least deliver a reason, or at least a place for people to then come and access Lumbini and access Chitwan. So our vision really is that soon, and I think the Tourism Board and Civil Aviation Network Association of Nepal had the same idea, really, that Gautam Buddha should have about 40% of the international tourists this time next year. So what we've done really is build a resort large enough to have so many different things going on, whether it's casinos or meetings, conventions, weddings is obviously a huge thing here in Nepal and also in India. So learning from our 5 or 6 years worth of experience and adding all of these elements to a large-scale integrated mixed-use property, we hope again is going to galvanize and facilitate a huge amount of tourism to the Terai area. So Chitwan, and then also Rangram, Palpa, Kapilvastu, Devadeha, all of the wonderful places that necessarily people might not have heard of, and even if they had, coming through Kathmandu and doing an additional flight adds expense and adds time. So I think the ability for people to come immediately there, we're hoping again as we add more hotel rooms and as other Nepalis and non-Nepalis add hotel rooms to that area, that will become essentially a second entry to Nepal and really bring Lumbini to the fore and help Nepal to generate its expected 2 million tourists in 2020. So, and we hope other people will come too. I think the proof that we've been able to overcome the issues and now to start making a return should entice other investors from abroad, again using that Singapore or the Japanese model as opposed to what used to be here in Nepal, which is a separation between the hotel and the operators of these types of venues.
Thank you so much.
I think we have one more question.
Yes, I think that would be the last question for this session. Can someone please hand over the cordless mic to the gentleman? Again, your name, where you're from, and your question, and who you direct the question to, sir.
Hello, can you hear? My name is Behzad Mirzai. I'm representing the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce. I'm coming from Hong Kong, neighbor of Macau. We have probably had visitors from mainland China, about 50 million last year. So including the foreign visitors, probably 80 million, and we're only 7 million people in the city. You can see how much capacity and how much job has been done to create infrastructure for accommodating 80 million in the city. My question go directly probably to all panelists, because now the Asian travelers are normally looking at one journey, multiple destination. They don't want to stay over, let's say, 1 or 2 nights in one single hotel. They want to go multiple location. Like, for example, we have these Great Bay Area happening in Hong Kong, Macau, and 9 mainland cities in the Guangdong. It's actually, if the tourists come, probably they want to stay all these 9 cities, every city is 1 night, at least for experience. Do you think Nepal can actually develop or take advantage of this concept? Let's say one journey. I'm come from Hong Kong, right? So I want to go to at least 5 destinations in the course of 5 days. Do you think it's possible, or if this, what would be the challenges? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I think I'll just try to answer that. I think absolutely possible, and in fact, we have many destinations in Nepal that have already been developed. So if you would come to Kathmandu, you would probably do Kathmandu city, and then you have the other 2 cities. But then you would take a 2-night for the jungle safari. So as Mr. Deepak pointed out, we are a vertical country. So right from the plains up to the highest mountains. So there is no dearth of products or experiences in this country. It's all about packaging it together. So you could be doing a beautiful experiential program for 14 nights to 20 nights here and have each of those destinations as an experience unique from each other. So absolutely, yes. If anybody else would like to add to that? Maybe Deepak, would you like to?
We are going to promote through this Visit Nepal campaign like that Nepal is for lifetime experiences, and that lifetime experiences encompasses many variety of activities. And as you mentioned, we are also promoting Nepal as a one vacation, many holiday breaks. So that kind of variety of activities we have, and we are going to promote in that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's been an amazing question and answer session. And I do hope that, however, that this will be a start of your engagement with tourism development in Nepal. As for one, for whom tourism has been the lifeblood of my family, for two, and now with 3 generations, I am grateful to have had this opportunity to hear and learn from all your extensive experiences. Nepal is blessed to have such extraordinary potential as this panel and these question and answers have so generously shown, for developing destinations for recreation and pilgrimages. I hope that each and every one of us will continue to try and make these potentialities into realities. And I want to say thank you very much to my panelists, to everybody in the hall for such a, I think, proactive and wonderful session. I would like to now request our chair, Dr. Ram Kumar Puyal, Member, National Planning Commission, to please do the wrap-up. Your Honorable Dr. Ram Kumar Puyal.
Excellencies, distinguished panelists, delegates, high-level government officers, all the foreign participants, and ladies and gentlemen, namaste and very good afternoon. I am very much pleased to be here in this very important event this afternoon, and very much delighted to have a very wonderful discussions and insightful as well as commendable remarks and suggestions made by our very scholarly distinguished panelists. The thoughts, ideas, experience and suggestions that has been given by our panelists are the noble ideas for us to promote our tourism business and to develop a tourism industry as one of the leading industries in Nepal. So I would like to thank all the panelists from the core of my heart for your insightful suggestion, dedication and contribution, and you have come to Kathmandu all the way from your long distance. Thank you very much. At the meantime, I would like to appreciate a lot to our colleagues, Mr. Deepak Raj Joshi, who highlighted our potentialities and our unique wealth of this globe so that we can develop a very ambitious plan to make tourism sector as one of the leading driving economic sectors of this nation. At the meantime, I also would like to thank all the participants, those who made a very high curiosity to know something better, something changeable, something transformative ideas if there is anything from our sides. So we made an attempt to, our panelists made an attempt to answer those questions. So I thank you all once again. In fact, it is true that Nepal has very rich spiritual and cultural heritages with natural beauty that makes it as one of the most naturally beautiful countries in the world. That attractions includes Nepal's rich history, old heritages, sites, museums, temples, fame as a birthplace of Buddha, wildlife, ancient traditions, culture, and ethnic diversity, as well as Nepalese themselves, who are most spiritually minded, value their guests, and culturally rooted. In fact, tourism in Nepal is a very growing business. Nepal welcomed nearly 1.2 million tourists in 2018, and the growth rate of tourist arrival has been consistently increased by 40% in 2016, 25% in 2017, and 25% in 2018. So it has a goal, the country has a goal to welcome 2 million tourists in 2020, and the government long-term plan has envisions to invite around 3.5 million tourists within next 5 years. So it is the fact that government has given the foremost priorities for the development of tourism sectors in its periodic and long-term vision as well. The government of Nepal has a national vision of tourism development and has been planning accordingly to support this increasing interest and investment in tourism from the private sectors as well. As spoken by our panelist, and panelist has raised some questions about public policy mechanism and master plans about tourism sectors. The government now has made an enabling environment for the tourism investment, in which we have been also drafting the economic, social, and environmental policies guidelines for the ownership, location, and internalization of the activities of these sectors in Nepal. It is the fact that government has clearly identified tourism as being fundamentals to Nepal's economic growth by envisioning quality tourism services as one of the key drivers of economic transformation. At the initial stage, government has initiated promoting the tourism sectors to generate the growth. Later, government has planned to invest more to accelerate the growth, and after few decades, government has a huge plan to invest more to sustain that business in Nepal. So the first and foremost things to work with us is to invest in tourism sectors. If we can't generate more production, the growth rate and GDP cannot be achieved. So we have a high target of achieving the growth rate, that is around 10%. So to achieve that growth rate also, we need to promote the tourism sectors. So I believe that private sectors can be much more creative in conceptualizing the new ideas, tourism products and services, in addition to what has already been presented in the by our colleagues. Though this valuable platform, through this valuable platform, on behalf of the government of Nepal, I commit to supporting the realization of these ideas and investment from the private sectors, both foreign and domestic alike. With a strong commitment, government of Nepal welcome you with open arms to explore opportunities to invest in the tourism sectors in Nepal. We assure you of all the necessary help from the government as appropriate. The discussion in this panel session as well as the participation at this summit itself indicate the deep trust that international and domestic investors have placed in Nepal, its potentials. Finally, I would like to thank once again to the panelists, delegates, and all the participants for making this event a success, and I wish you all a very nice and happy stay in Kathmandu. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Tourism is definitely one of the largest industry in Nepal and amongst the biggest source of foreign exchange and revenue. Nepal is also definitely more than mountains and does cater to a wide range of tourists with small, medium and large pockets. I also hope that your tickets back home are not scheduled for day after and you do utilize this time and this opportunity to explore our vibrant city and our beautiful country, Nepal. This time you're here. I hope that Nepal will be a wonderful experience for you, and next time around when you're visiting Nepal, we'll be able to pleasantly surprise you with the transformations that we have made in this industry. So thanking our chair, our wonderful moderator, our presenter and all our panelists, I would now like to request and invite on stage Mr. Kedar Bahadur Adhikari, Secretary, Commerce and Supplies from the Ministry of Industry, Commerce and Supplies, to kindly join us on stage and present a token of appreciation to the session chair. Would like to request Honorable Dr. Ramkumar Fuyal, Member, National Planning Commission, our chair for this session, to accept a small token of appreciation from our side. Our presenter for this session, Mr. Deepak Raj Joshi, CEO, Nepal Tourism Board. Our wonderful moderator for this session, Ms. Sangeeta Shrestha, Managing Director, Dwarka's Group of Hotels and Resorts. And may I say, I was also very proud for a woman hosting and moderating this session as well and leading this session. Next, I'd also like to request our panelists, Mr. Mike Bolsover, MD and CEO of Silver Heritage Group, to kindly accept a small token of appreciation. And Professor Glenn James McCartney, Associate Professor in International Integrated Resort Management, University of Macau. Also our panelist, Mr. Akihiko Hori, General Manager, Headquarter of Managerial Planning, World Air Sea Service Company Limited. So with this session, we come towards the end of all the sessions for day one of Nepal Investment Summit. I hope that all the sessions today have added value to your life and informed you on the various changes that are happening in the various areas of investment. I'd also like to inform all of you that tonight's dinner is being hosted by Right Honorable Prime Minister of Nepal, Mr. K.P. Sharma Oli, and would like to request and invite all of you to join us for dinner. And I hope to see you all tomorrow at the Nepal Investment Summit Day 2. And I'd also like to inform all of you that at 7 p.m. here in this hall, we have a wonderful performance by Kutumba Band. And thank everyone for joining here. And after this session, we have a small side event that is happening on women in business and youth entrepreneurship development. So if any of you are interested in any of these two topics, I'd humbly like to request you to kindly do join us for side event. So thank you so much. It has been a pleasure hosting day one of Nepal Investment Summit. I hope to see you all energized tomorrow at the second day of Nepal Investment Summit. Thank you very much and have a good evening ahead.